This genius 8K cinema camera could change cameras for the future because there's something about this design that I think a lot of people might glaze over. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit and I want your thoughts in the comments. Firstly though, I hear you saying, I don't need an 8K camera. But the thing is, there's more to this than just resolution. So I want to show you some of the additional features that this camera has to offer. This is the new DJI 8K cinema camera for the Ronin 4D. And if you didn't already know what the Ronin 4D was, it's this all-in-one cinema camera and 4-axis gimbal as well. Look at that chicken camera. The X9 8K is basically this part, but on steroids. Don't take steroids. Don't do it. Although you might need it to pick this thing up. It's a bit of a beast. You can buy it as a combo with the camera body and the gimbal camera together, or if you already own the original 4D, then you can just get the 8K module as an upgrade. Just to let you know up front, DJI did send me this camera, but I don't get to keep it, and they didn't tell me to say anything, so that means that everything in this video that I talk about is 100% honest feedback based on the tests that I've done with it so far. Have you ever wondered what makes a cinema camera a cinema camera? Some people say it's the resolution, some say it's about how it can be rigged out and used by a whole crew, and then some say image quality. And while you can create stunning images with most cameras these days, the DJI 8K is worthy of the cinema camera status. One, because of its expansion features, which I'll talk about in a bit, but mainly because of the upgraded DJI Cinema Color Science engine and Acer's workflow, which covers a wider color gamut seen in other commonly used cameras in the film industry. This is going to give you more vivid colors and more accurate skin tones in a variety of lighting situations, and allows your grading to look exactly how you want it across a wide range of displays and when matching other cameras. Just look how nice the colors are. The skin tones are more consistent across the face in this shot. As you can see on the 6K version, it still looks great, but you can see the changes in the tones. There's a little bit more red and orangey, darker, patchy areas. It's still very nice on both, but because it is a wider color range, it's processing that range of colors so much better. I'm keeping this, DJI. Keeping it. It's not going back. The dual native ISO and dynamic range expansion mode of up to 14.7 stops gives you so much flexibility with your exposure and your color grading, as well as a more pleasing highlight roll-off, which matches iconic cameras of the cinema world. And you can really tell a difference in the bright areas of the sky. There's so much more detail, and it just makes it loads easier to expose, and you know you're still going to get all the detail in your shadowy parts and your highlight parts of your image. The Lumix S5 Mark II that I use right now has a really good dynamic range for such a small camera, but when you use something like this, it just takes it that step further. Alright, what's the number one feature that you'd like to see in more cameras? Let me know in the comments. For me, it's built-in ND filters, because it drives me scranny threading and unthreading the filters over your lenses, getting the different sizes and maybe having to use step-up rings. And then obviously you got to remember to bring them with you, which I rarely do. I've had to keep a separate set in my bag just in case. I'm over it. I'm done with it. And obviously ND filters gives you that ultimate control over your exposure in uncontrolled environments. The 8K version comes with built-in NDs, just like the original version. It's so good having that flexibility built into the camera. Love it. Like, it just makes lens changing so much quicker. Speaking of lenses, they've got a variety of different lenses. Because of the size of the gimbal, you can only really put smaller and more lightweight lenses on, but that's why the L-mount Lumix lenses are perfect for this, because they're all the same size, all the same weight, and they balance perfectly. Not only that, DJI have teamed up with Lumix, so you can use LiDAR with these lenses and you don't have to set up the focus motor, which is another huge bonus. It's one less thing I have to do when switching lenses. It's super quick now. Don't you hate it when a new camera comes out and you get all excited and it has almost everything on it except one thing? They always have to hold back on something, don't they? And most of the time, it's the slow-mo capabilities. There's always a crop of some sort. And for some, it's no big deal. I don't mind a little bit of a crop in slow motion. I don't really use it that much anyway, and it's not a big deal for me to reframe unless you're in a tight space. A little bit annoying then. But it is nice when there are no compromises. And this camera delivers on that slow-mo front because it has 4K 120 frames per second and 8K 60 frames a second full frame, no crop. And some cameras' slow motion image quality isn't great, it's nowhere near as good as the normal 25 or 24 frames a second image, but the slow-mo footage from this camera looks absolutely stunning. It's the best slow-mo I've ever seen in a camera that I've used. So what am I talking about? Why do I think this camera could change the future for all other cameras? And it's an interesting one, so I want to know your thoughts in the comments. But basically, what DJI did a couple of years ago was release this camera system, the all-in-one camera body, gimbal, and the sensor itself, with a view to upgrading the camera sensor part. It's a modular design. You know what it's like when you buy a camera and then if you get a Sony, for example, 10 minutes later they bring a new camera out. You'd think you have to upgrade and you have to buy the entire thing and it gets very expensive. But if more cameras were designed in this way, where you only had to upgrade the sensor part of the camera, we could save a lot of money there. Now, I don't know what that would be like for business, for the brands, but interesting to see where that concept takes us. What do you think? And then maybe you might like the colours coming from your camera sensor. So if they upgraded the body, you could just buy the body. You know, it's something to think about. On top of everything else that this camera has going for it, there's one major thing that I don't want you to miss. You know when you watch a film or a Netflix show and think, how does it have that cinematic image? And you try and get as close as possible with it with your camera, but you just can't quite get there. Parts of your image might have these odd colour shifts known as moire. Poirot. No, it's different. And you see this a lot in detailed parts of texture and detail that's far away from the camera. For example, on this bag, you can see red lines. It's almost like moving banding. It's weird. You know, that takes away from your overall image. You might get perfect colours, really nice lighting, but then in the detail, you're getting these odd colour things happening. Most of the time you don't notice it because it's only very small, but you know, it'd be nice to have a clean looking frame. But when I use the new 8K camera, that disappears and you can see all the detail perfectly clearly. That's because this camera has an optical low pass filter. Yeah, I know it sounds like something in the audio world, but it's basically a filter over the sensor to help the light pass through properly and block some of that strange false colour coming through. Now there is a trade-off to that. It makes your image a little bit softer, but the thing is, a lot of videographers prefer that softer image. You've still got the detail there, but the overall image looks a bit softer, and I actually prefer it. I really like that. So I see it as two bonuses there. And you also get a bit of that softness from using cinema lenses as well, so it's kind of a double whammy if you use cinema lenses on this. And it's those details like that filter and everything else that I've talked about that lead to a more professional looking shot. So who is this camera for? Using a smaller mirrorless camera like the Lumix S5 Mark II, for example, is amazing, especially for a solo shooter. It's tiny, easy to use, but then with a dedicated cinema camera, you've got all the buttons that you'd need access to on the actual body, so it's so much quicker to get set up. The larger display with this built-in monitor is awesome to have. It takes a while to get used to. It requires some practice, so don't feel like this could turn up at your doorstep and then you go and film a client project that afternoon. You're gonna have to practice a little bit with this first to get used to the ergonomics of it and how things work, but once you do, the image is so good. Because it's got LiDAR, it can autofocus for you. And that means this camera is ideal for the solo shooter who wants the best image quality and all the features, including the gimbal, that this camera has. And then on the other end of the spectrum, this camera is also great for a whole production crew, because this thing gets even better when you rig it out in different ways. For example, you can use the wireless external monitor, put the handles on that monitor, and someone else can pull focus for you while you're framing up the shot. And it really is a high production beast. So it's a little bit for everyone. Would Hollywood use something like this? There's no reason why not, because that film that's just come out recently that was filmed on the Sony FX3, which is a tiny camera, I don't see why they wouldn't use this. There you go. I don't know if anyone has, actually. Be interesting. Let me know if you know if anyone's used this. Now, if you're interested in seeing how I colour grade all of my footage, regardless of what camera I'm using, I've actually got a workshop, which there's a link to in the description below, and it shows you my 3-step process for getting professional looking colours, no matter what camera you use or what it is you're filming. So go and check that out. There's a full website below. In the meantime, if you wanted to see some more videography related stuff, check out this video here, and I'll see you in the next one.